It's the first full day following a Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity that critics say puts American democracy at risk. And already today, as nonpartisan experts warn that a would-be autocrat would be newly empowered to wield power without checks, Donald Trump's MAGA allies are saying that he knows it. This morning, Axios reporting that Trump is planning, quote, to immediately test the boundaries of presidential and governing power if he retakes the White House, because he knows the restraints of Congress and the courts are dramatically looser than during his first term. That is the context for this striking imagery. A future Trump wearing a gold crown under the headline, Imperial Presidency in Waiting. The Washington Post with a slightly less dramatic but still jarring headline. Supreme Court's Trump immunity ruling poses risk for democracy, experts say. The New York Times dubbing the ruling from conservative justices a, quote, extraordinary expansion of executive power. Multiple reports indicate Trump's imperial presidency, as Axios is calling it, would involve an unprecedented power grab in which he would turn the Justice Department against critics, deport millions of people in the United States illegally, slap 10% tariffs on thousands of products, and fire perhaps tens of thousands of government staff deemed insufficiently loyal. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. As Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote in her withering dissent, if a president, quote, orders the Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power, immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon, immune, 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 immune. This is why Donald Trump's long history of threats against political rivals, journalists, immigrants, former military figures, and others has suddenly taken on a new and more urgent meaning. For years, Trump has been clear about what he wants to do. Tonight, it's an open question about whether anything could stop him or could hold him to account.
Donald Trump, Peter Baker, is expressing support for holding televised military tribunals against former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney.
Social media posts calling for the indictment of the members of Congress who were on the January 6th Select Committee.
I am 5,000% sure that Merrick Garland is going to end up in prison.
Steve Bannon was more explicit. He told Axios that Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg should be and will be jailed.
The president told Comey he should throw journalists in jail.
You take the writer and or the publisher of the paper, a certain paper, and you say, who is the leaker? National Security. And they say, we're not going to tell you. They say, it's okay, you're going to jail.
Trump has left the door open to jailing his political opponents.
When you ask me the question, would we do it? I'll talk to you in about 3 years from now.
Joe Biden is a criminal, and he's been a criminal for a long time. And you're a criminal in the media for not reporting it.
Because you'd be in jail.
The people that will be on the list know who they are. Know who they are. You see McCabe wetting himself.
Over the weekend, Trump effectively said that Milley should be executed for treason.
You would rule in the possibility of using nuclear weapons against ISIS?
Well, I'm never going to rule anything out. We got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country.
If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official.
Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight, you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
The court's ruling already rippling through the political and legal systems, and we'll get to all of it tonight as the country grapples with what comes next.
Politically, it's almost like a license to thug in a way.
The president is a lot more like a monarch than you might have guessed. He is not accountable criminally to the laws of this country.
This is an earth-shaking opinion, huge implications for the presidency.
And this is a death squad ruling. This is a ruling that says that as long as you can construe it as an official or quasi-official act, you can do absolutely anything.
Joining me now is Reverend Al Sharpton, the host of MSNBC's Politics Nation and the president of the National Action Network, and Howard Dean, former DNC chair and the governor of Vermont. Both of these fine gentlemen know a thing or two about politics and power. Both ran for the Democratic nomination in 2004, even sharing the same debate stage as you see here on your screen. Gentlemen, thank you for getting us started. Rev Al, I'm going to start with you. Thank you for being here. Is it hyperbolic to say that an imperial presidency is on its way if Donald Trump retakes the Oval?
I don't think it's hyperbolic at all. One, because the court's ruling certainly opens the door to that. And secondly, anyone that knows Donald Trump, and I have, he could not be more of a narcissist that would use it. If you had somebody reasonable, you'd say, well, they're not going to go all the way. This is a man that said when he was running for president that if I shot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue, my voters would still vote for me. That's how he thinks. He thinks like someone that always wanted to have imperial powers, and he feels he has the license to get it by the Supreme Court, where he put 3 people on that bench. There could not be a more serious threat to American democracy than to have a milkshake mixed with that Supreme Court and Donald Trump. We've got to stop this no matter what.
You know, Howard, I pose the same question to you, and it's pretty obvious, right? The people that Trump idolizes are dictators. They're oligarchs. They're people that are functioning in systems of government, if you can even say that kindly, that we've rejected over so much time. We've chosen not to live that way. Your thoughts about what Axios is calling an imperial presidency in waiting?
Yeah, this is really like what happened in Poland and what's happening in Hungary.
Yeah.
The court system is a critical part of the three-legged stool of democracy. This court has lost its legitimacy. So we no longer have a court system that's, in my view, a legitimate court system. They were appointed with lots and lots of money from the Federalist Society. 2 of them are clearly corrupt and taking money from people who sometimes are involved in matters that come before them. The remaining justices that on the Republican side are partisan Republicans that have previously been involved, as Justice Roberts was, in stealing the election in Florida. So we have no court system now as of that decision that is reliable, and we don't have a democracy that's reliable. So this is no longer a matter of saving democracy. This is a matter of restoring democracy. The court has to be completely revised. It may take a constitutional amendment, but it can be done without a constitutional amendment. But we no longer live in a democracy, technically, because we no longer have a functioning court system.
You know, Rev Al, we spend a lot of time, your show, my show, this show, other networks, showing what we just heard, those threats from Donald Trump. And I feel like we've become numb to it. There's been a normalization of, oh, well, that's just Donald Trump being Donald Trump. And yet now, with this license to kill, with this unfettered ability to act upon whatever his impulses are, you talk about the fact that Trump has always been this way. How much clearer of a clarion is there now for the call for people to recognize and appreciate that this has literally become an existential threat?
Just look at what he did before he had this decision. Here's a man that put children in cages when they came across the border. And he didn't have the power that this decision gave him yesterday. Here's a man that, before he had this power, dismissed medical experts and helped to cause the prolonging of the biggest health crisis we've seen in 100 years. Had he managed that differently and not be so caught up in that I'm the one that's going to tell you what's happening and I don't want anything to disrupt my presidency, I argue that a lot of people wouldn't have died. So how could you doubt, with him feeling more empowered, what can you do more than to try to act like a pandemic is not coming when they're stacking up bodies because they ran out of funeral home space in the state of New York? And he's saying it'll be over in a couple of weeks, take some bleach. So if he would do that before he was empowered and worried about the balance of powers, imagine what he would do now when he feels he has a license to do whatever he could fantasize doing.
You know, Howard, the New York Times noting today that Trump has called for the jailing of President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Senators Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, and former Vice President Mike Pence, among other high-profile politicians. Your take on how credible those threats have now become in light of what happened yesterday with SCOTUS?
There's nothing to prevent Trump from doing that. He can call up the Attorney General and order him and law enforcement officials to arrest anybody he damn well pleases. That's this power that this court, this corrupt court, has given him. So we are in deep, deep trouble. And the trouble is now. It's not, oh, we'll fix it by electing Joe Biden, although that would be a big fix. This court is no longer a serious, fair, legitimate court. It is a tool of the far right. There's corruption. They were chosen in a corrupt process. This has been going on for 20 years. When the Supreme Court stopped the vote on a 5-4 partisan vote in 2000 between Gore and Bush. It's one thing to make a ruling. It's another thing to stop the vote count. And so this is 20 years, and the Federalist Society is, very financed by gazillionaires, and they now have won. And now the question is, can we stop them? Can we reassess? Can we support our democracy as they did in Poland, where they got their democracy back at the ballot box? But the window for that is rapidly closing.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.